Thanks for tuning in to another installment of Advanced TV Herstory, a podcast that studies, analyzes, and celebrates women in television. Thousands of comedies, variety shows, and dramas and other events have aired, yet the presence of strong women, both in front of and behind the camera, is an experience we need to understand better and embrace. With an eye to aligning the leadership lesson, time capsule observation, or fascinating backstory of a show's success or failure, my goal of Advanced TV Herstory is to connect the treasures of the past to the great potential of today's TV and online platforms. Tomorrow's success is rooted in understanding what has come before us. So gear up for a little sociology, economics, strategy, storytelling, and fun. It's all here at Advanced TV Herstory. I'm your host, Cynthia Bemis Abrams. Welcome to Advanced TV Herstory's conclusion to the excellent series, The Closer, which aired on cable TV's TNT channel from 2005 to 2012. You may recall that a few months back, I posted a podcast that took a long, hard look at the show's first 4 seasons. Today, we're going to pick up where we left off and examine the last 3 seasons of life in the LA Police Department's Major Crimes Division. The 7-season show enjoyed a tremendous consistency of characters. So the formula of actors and roles remains almost the same. Instead, the latter half takes advantage of the stability that comes with a high-performing team and brings the viewer to situations that involve trust, ethics, and the drive we all find in ourselves to advance our careers. The Closer stars Kyra Sedgwick and a host of fine actors including J.K. Simmons as Chief Pope, Corey Reynolds as Detective Gabriel, Robert Gossett as Commander Taylor, G.W. Bailey as Lieutenant Provenza, Michael Paul Chan as Lieutenant Tao, Raymond Cruz as Detective Sanchez, and Tony Dennison as Detective Flynn. In seasons 5, 6, and 7, other characters, however, take on greater importance. Brenda's husband, FBI agent and later FBI liaison to the LAPD, Fritz Howard, is played by Jon Tenney. We enjoy the return of her parents, played by Frances Sternhagen and Barry Corbin. We also get a chance to meet Kyra Sedgwick's daughter in real life, Sosie Bacon, who guests in 4 episodes as Brenda Leigh's niece, Charlie. The biggest addition to the series emerged in the second half in the form of Captain Sharon Raydor, played by Mary McDonnell. McDonnell is an accomplished actress with credits on the silver screen, TV, and the stage. She received 2 Academy Award nominations, 1 for Dances with Wolves, and 1 for Passion Fish, and was nominated for an Emmy for a guest role on ER and a Golden Globe for her role as Sharon Raydor on The Closer. By the end of the series run, Captain Sharon Raydor's role in what seems to be only 1/4 of the episodes has, however, a profound impact on Deputy Chief Johnson's career and her outlook on life. McDonnell consistently delivered a middle-aged, accomplished police captain role, line for line, scene for scene, to Sedgwick's role as a deputy chief. After their first encounter, when they are introduced, and we are introduced, to Captain Raydor, who has to play an adversarial role most of the time to the Major Crimes Division in her role in internal affairs, the viewer is left to wonder where the large story arc is going for these 2 alpha women. Is the LAPD big enough for both of them? Following the complex, high-profile cases of the Major Crimes Division and its tenacious leader, we'll take a look at the relationships and the challenges that ultimately result in Brenda leaving her post for another opportunity. The series, The Closer, is spun off to Major Crimes, so there's more good drama with light comic relief on TV even today. Tune in to TNT. But look upon the first 4 seasons as the good old days. In the squad room, we were introduced to Deputy Chief Johnson and witnessed her team of seasoned detectives storm, norm, and finally perform under her leadership. Johnson modeled team-based communications, delegation of responsibility, accountability, and diligence through the entire season. Now, in real life, there are real-world surveys that show that there are certain traits employees look for in the person who leads them, and the top ones are honesty, ability to cooperate, and dependability and competence. Deputy Chief Johnson scores well in at least 3 out of the 4 of these, and is known at times to cooperate well so long as she's got a voice at the table for strategy and execution. It's a great show, so in doing this analysis, it's difficult to not get too deep into the plot lines that carry over, and even as minor plots carry over, without spoiling the experience for a viewer. So instead, we're going to look at how Season 5 kicks off, taking us home with Brenda more frequently than we had ever gone in the first 4 seasons. We're also taken a bit more inside her mindset. The frequent themes of trust, ethics, and drive pop up in both places. Kyra Sedgwick is well into her 40s and is credited as a producer in a majority of the show's episodes. As a producer, and along with the writers, she takes us on the fast-paced, long days of Deputy Chief Johnson, who has shown no sign of letting up in terms of her tenacity or her appetite for investigating major, and sometimes minor, crimes. Brenda is still happily married to Fritz. While the marriage seems strong, in spite of them having to work so closely together in high-stress situations, there is a healthy give and take from both of them, which is usually Brenda taking and Fritz giving. However, the last few seasons also delve into Fritz's alcoholism and his commitment to sobriety. This requires Brenda to trust something she can't see, and also accept him for his word and the stories he's told her of the man he was and how he behaved prior to his seeking help. Detective Flynn's admission of alcoholism and 15 years of sobriety also gives Brenda the opportunity to continue learning about something that seemingly had never touched her life before she met Fritz. It's pretty standard for police dramas to refer to alcoholism and in fact feature a prominent character who struggles to maintain sobriety within a law enforcement career. On to Brenda Leigh's parents. Introduced early on in the series, the Johnsons, Willie Ray and Clay from Atlanta, continued to provide a little seasonal comic relief as well as project the subtle symbolism that major crimes is a family. Most moments, it seems, the only trait Brenda shares with her parents is an accent. They are chatty, unfocused, and absorbed in their retirement, very different from their daughter. Other women might be embarrassed, but not Brenda. In front of her team, she accepts and shares her parents' love and support. So when her niece Charlie comes to stay, we feel the purpose may be for the writers to put to bed any notion Brenda ever had of having a baby. Her maternal instincts are tested, and she passes. Her time with Charlie helps her role play in a way that makes her more compassionate. Here's how we see Brenda evolve during Charlie's visit. Charlie's a teenager with an attitude, and she's tested Brenda and Fritz's patience to the limit. Brenda drops Charlie off at the high school that she's temporarily attending when a school shooting erupts, and Brenda is rattled by the added responsibility she feels for Charlie's well-being while also doing her duties as a police officer. She doesn't know or trust Charlie well enough to be able to anticipate her actions through the day's events, but Brenda sees it as a convenient opportunity to find out.
Excuse me, gentlemen, did you see that?
Do you have change for a soda?
I told you not to move.
I had to go to the bathroom.
I don't care. And when I say stay in the car, I mean stay in the car. I could have shot you.
I was trying to help.
I didn't ask for your help. Don't you interrupt me. Let's get to work. Since you seem to be so interested in how this boy's doing, you can stay here with him when he gets out of surgery. Call me the second he wakes up.
Why me?
I'm giving you the chance to show that you can care about someone other than yourself for a few minutes, someone with real problems. So sit here and think about how lucky you are that you're out here and not in there.
With the assignment to remain with Jake at the hospital, Charlie is left up to her own devices and forms a bond with him.
Well, he's through surgery and already out of anesthesia and talking to his sister, so that's good.
His sister?
Oh, yeah, she's been glued to him.
Okay, let me see my face. Oh, God, my hair.
Don't worry. You look great.
Really?
Okay, that's enough for now. He needs to rest.
Be right there. I have to go. I have, other, patients to see, so nice to meet you.
Hey, will you come back?
Of course, as soon as I can. I just have to check the schedule.
Jake, it's good to see you up, and, excuse me just a second. Just one moment. I have to check the schedule.
He thinks I'm a youth volunteer.
And the nurses think you're his sister?
They only allow family members in the ICU. Thank God I heard you use his mom's name. Obviously, Jake knows I'm not his sister, so I told him I was a youth volunteer. It was easier than explaining that you're my aunt.
You two are so related.
Charlie leaves the hospital with Fritz, and the boy's parents still haven't arrived. The boy's condition crashes, and Brenda finds herself in an unusual position.
Is my mom coming?
Yes, she is, just as soon as possible.
Sorry about the sweater.
Don't you worry about that. I promise I'll be here the minute you wake up.
Jake ultimately dies from his wounds. So Brenda experiences responsibility across the generations and also manages her own expectations of who her niece is. Initially, she comes across as pretty judgmental, but Brenda settles down with Charlie enough to provide a safe and memorable stay in LA, but not a permanent one.
You're gonna make me go back, aren't you?
Charlie, your parents would be devastated if you didn't come back.
But what about me? What about what I want? I mean, does that just not matter? Don't you think I've changed since I've been here? I'm not the same person that I was.
Charlie, who you are, it doesn't depend on where you are. Who you are is something you take with you wherever you go. Believe me, even if you don't want to.
Do you not want me here?
Charlie. Drove me crazy for 3 weeks. Now you're gonna make me cry. Of course, I want you here. I do, but we gave you a second chance. Don't you think your parents deserve one too?
Yes, I don't have a choice.
And I'm coming. I'm coming again real soon, I promise.
You know you always say that and you never do.
Well, maybe I deserve a second chance too. You'll be fine. You will.
We'll see.
Brenda and Fritz send Charlie back to Atlanta to Brenda's brother and his wife. Over time, we see Brenda's maturing judgment at play in how she handles cases, witnesses, suspects, and victims. The writers prepare plots that play into that a bit: homeless youth, gangs, chronic poverty, illegal immigrants who work domestic jobs in LA, and various aspects of the entertainment industry that bring out the worst in people and reveal those who are perhaps more victimized by society than others. Unlike Law and Order SVU, The Closer features no prosecutor from the district attorney's office as a recurring character in plots. Such a professional, who would be focused on the endgame of courtroom-based justice, would have been another layer of conflict, at least as Brenda might perceive it, and her team in Major Crimes, toward getting the job done. Another impediment. Presumably, one of the reasons Brenda was hired into the LAPD was to preempt cases going to court by garnering more confessions. This puts incredible pressure on Brenda to follow the rules of evidence, to know constitutional law, and develop a logic path toward achieving an ironclad confession. For the LAPD, it might be more economical to put away confessed criminals. However, it's enough of a specialty that the viewer begins to understand it comes at its own cost: questionable ethics and justice. The show hit the jackpot and took on the subjects of ethics and justice when they brought on veteran actress Mary McDonnell to serve first as foil and then as trustworthy colleague to Deputy Chief Johnson. McDonnell plays Captain Sharon Raydor, who is the ranking officer in the LAPD's Internal Affairs Department. This is Brenda's first encounter with Captain Raydor when it has been determined that Detective Gabriel has fired his weapon while off duty.
Captain Raydor, it's so nice to finally meet you. So, I was told that Sergeant Gabriel and the victim had been sent to Cedars, and here you all are at St. Catherine's Medical Center, and I was just wondering, how is it that you happened to be at the right hospital while I was sent to the wrong one? If I may, I'd like to offer some advice. When investigating shootings like this, I question the criminals first before my fellow officers.
When I have an unarmed civilian sprayed by bullets from a member of the LAPD, I expect cooperation. It encourages me. And if I could offer you some advice, while I am investigating this shooting, be careful where you place your sympathies.
Chief.
Excuse me?
Be careful where you place your sympathies. Chief. You are a captain and a subordinate officer, and you will remember that when addressing me. Do I make myself clear, Captain?
Perfectly. Chief. Excuse me. Got work to do.
Captain Raydor's job is to investigate any incident involving an officer who has shot or killed someone, an officer who is the subject of litigation or criminal charges, or an officer who has been accused of a lapse in professional conduct. For major crimes and its fast-paced handling of high-profile cases, Raydor has practically been assigned her own desk. Let's revisit the formula for what was necessary for the success of Cagney Lacey, one of the most prominent and well-known TV shows that featured two women in police duty who were the lead characters. Okay, yes, it's important to say the obvious, that Cagney and Lacey were partners, and they were supposed to collaborate from day one to get the job done. The two characters needed to contrast in as many ways as they could to be interesting, yet they also needed to be realistic. One was sloppier with procedure, one was more detailed. One was married, one wasn't. One was blonde, the other brunette. One took risks, the other was more measured. One was interested in advancing her career. The other was satisfied with her status today, but was perhaps interested in moving up in the future. Was I describing Cagney and Lacey or Deputy Chief Johnson and Captain Raydor? Both, I'd say, and that's precisely why, with great acting, we rooted for both pairs to prevail. Now, in 2008, it was reported in a study by the Bureau of Justice Statistics that large local police departments, such as the LAPD, were comprised of only 15% women. And that's among the largest percentage among large police departments. If you're looking for women in law enforcement, you'll find smaller numbers in smaller departments and higher numbers in such non-frontline service such as the U.S. Forest Service with nearly 16%, the FBI with 19%, or the Office of the Inspector General with 25% of the employees being women. Over the 7 seasons, we only see Deputy Chief Johnson in her uniform a few times, and Captain Raydor maybe once. It may never be known whether this show, featuring strong women characters, proved aspirational for teenage girls or young women viewers, thereby resulting in their choosing careers in law enforcement. I'm guessing the answer to that question can be found in the two actresses' fan mail. There's not a lot of bond visible between the two women, less than we've seen with other lead women on cop shows. But in spite of the low-level conflict that underscores their encounters, that necessary tension, they control their behavior very well. That's a departure from a lot of what we see on TV today, particularly with the advent of reality shows. We're pretty much accustomed to seeing women who are competitive with each other resolve their differences or salve their aggressions with verbal volleys of insults, threats, and ugly language. Now remember, throughout the entire full 7-season run, few women ever appeared as victims, witnesses, or suspects who really tested Brenda's mettle. They usually weren't as clever or educated, and were frequently more disposed to some level of irrational, or at least something signaling a weakness in Brenda's eyes, behavior, acting on virtue, honor, tradition, religion, pride, or some ill-conceived shot at getting rich quick. Brenda could pretty much dismiss any woman who walked into her interview room and either get her to confess or rule her out immediately as a suspect. So amongst her all-male team and mostly male stable of people to interview, Brenda Leigh Johnson had her own persona nailed down, and it yielded success, this formula of hers. But by season 7, Raydor is tasked with overseeing activities in Johnson's division to ensure the work meets professional standards and doesn't take on any more risk for future litigation and complaint. I'm leaving out a story thread here because I don't want to spoil too much, but let's just say that by the last season, things are pretty tense in the squad room. So Sharon Raydor, as a career peer with a rank just below Brenda's, brings the powers of observation and logic to her job. Here's how McDonnell describes it.
Captain Raydor is an internal affairs professional, literally. She has a very strict professional code, and I do believe it's an internal quality of hers. She is the type of person who is able to navigate an unfriendly environment, expect it, and keep pushing to get what she needs done. You want to be impressed and slightly intimidated by the level of work around you. That's what activates your aspiration, your desire to find how you fit in with this thing.
Brenda is all about the detail. Sharon is about the big picture. So no, even in season 7, when Sedgwick and McDonnell share more screen time than in earlier seasons, they are not partners like Cagney and Lacey. But their relationship, being on the same team and all, requires a level of trust comparable to what we'd expect police personnel to require of each other. Again, here's how McDonnell describes it in an interview held in conjunction with an event at the Paley Center in LA.
Butting heads since day one.
Okay.
How do you feel about that as from a character standpoint?
Well, as an actress, when I came into butt heads, we already loved each other. We met and we just went, oh, let's work together. And James Duff said, okay. And so there was already a trust. There was an instinctive trust between two actresses that I think we would like to have more in Hollywood, but it's rare. She was so open to having me come in, and I knew that I was coming in to stir the pot, so we knew exactly what we were up to, and so we surrendered to it quite readily, and it actually built trust between the actresses. And now that underlying feeling is starting to move into the story. It's turning. And I'm, as a woman, very thrilled about that, because I think women in power quite often, by the culture, are set up to butt heads. And they're a little afraid to be like this, because it's male world still, is it not? So the fact that maybe we can, in front of the fans and with the fans, turn that a bit and see that women actually can grow into real supporters of each other inside this incredibly complicated male world.
I think
LAPD,
I think this season especially you can really see it, because Pope is giving you one command basically to throw Brenda under the bus.
Oh yeah.
And
I don't like that.
Yeah, and I saw you kind of like trying to circumvent that and still follow orders.
That's right.
Now remember, Assistant Chief Pope had brought Deputy Chief Johnson to LA to lead the Major Crimes Division from Atlanta, partly to get Johnson out of her department's ethics investigation. Chief Pope and Deputy Chief Johnson had worked together for the Atlanta Police Department many years ago. LA indeed was a fresh start for Deputy Chief Johnson. However, between the sheer volume of the caseloads and the interwoven cases that accrued over six or 7 years' time among the gangs and the known criminals and the high-profile cases of the entertainment industry and political figures, she's learned the culture of the streets and the ways of the politics, and she's mastered how to incur confessions that send a criminal, high profile or low, directly to sentencing. They've stayed out of the papers. There's been no scandals. For a results-driven organization, Brenda Leigh Johnson's Major Crimes Division is unmatched. However, the ethical edge does get pushed more and more after each major case. Shortcuts are assessed for their risk, favors get called in, and Deputy Chief Johnson's reputation for interrogations that deliver confessions has now become legend in LA. Captain Raydor is a fly in that ointment of success. and she's a soft-spoken fly who delivers her point or order with a measured pace. She dresses more conservatively than Brenda does, but they both have longer hair, very fit body shapes, and similar choices in pantsuits. Perhaps the most key difference, though, is that Raydor's interest in keeping Brenda out of hot water far exceeds any interest Brenda has in Raydor's career. It takes an outpouring of honesty by Captain Raydor to Brenda for Brenda to get that very point. There's an opening for the post of the chief of the LAPD, which is 2 steps higher than Brenda's current position, and it becomes clear that Assistant Chief Pope isn't the only person studying the application.
Oh, Captain Raydor, come in.
I just wanted to say thank you. Since your husband neutralized Joe Myers, the FBI gets to do all the after-action cleanup. All of Internal Affairs owes you a huge favor.
Well, only chance I can get to make your life a little easier.
And you showed great bravery.
Well, thank you. But the credit goes to all major crimes. And, of course, Chief Pope.
By the way, I think that you'll be pleased to know that I've completed my investigation.
Oh, you finished your background on Chief Pope?
I didn't say I was doing a background check on Chief Pope. As the LAPD's women's coordinator, I am on the search committee for our new boss. The mayor and the police commission want a strong female candidate in the mix. You are the highest ranking woman in the department now, so...
What's this?
It's an application for the chief of the LAPD. All candidates need to get one in within the next 2 weeks.
I see it's already been filled out for me.
All it needs is your signature. From our conversations, I gather that you are still very close to Chief Pope. I do hope that this incredible opportunity doesn't cause any friction between the two of you. 2 weeks, Chief Johnson.
Chief of Police.
It's fun to watch Brenda as she appears not too interested in navigating the internal politics necessary to think about how her day-to-day performance might impact her candidacy. Pope learns of her application and initially isn't supportive at all. Then he reveals his own insecurities about the process with this conversation with her.
And good luck with Pope, huh?
Do you have a minute?
Yeah, I've been meaning to find you, actually, to offer my congratulations.
Thank you.
And to say I thought about what we discussed earlier, and I think you should definitely submit your application for Chief of Police. I'm only sorry I didn't recognize that yesterday.
Are you?
Yeah, seems obvious now. I mean, there should be a high-ranking female from within the department applying, and if there's going to be a woman in the candidate pool, better it be you than somebody else.
And that's because?
Well, your presence will help deter other women from applying, and, you know, you'll be given serious consideration, but they'll never hire you as chief in a million years, so really it's perfect for me.
Is that so? What makes you so certain I won't get it?
Brenda, please, you can't even control your own officers. And Flynn and Provenza were outwitted by a couple of stewardesses.
Flight attendants, and they weren't outwitted.
Really? Where are they now?
You know, maybe if you hadn't called them a couple of skanks, they would have told us where they parked your car. I'm just saying. Do you think it's possible for you to shut up?
When the shortlist for police chief is announced, it contains Brenda's name and not Pope's. Raydor goes into overdrive to help Brenda prepare.
Because the mayor's just finished interviewing the other 4 applicants for chief of police, and you're the only woman, so you make for a vivid contrast. I think that we should capitalize on your feminine strengths.
Which are?
Don't take this the wrong way, Chief, because I have always admired how little you care about current fashion and the purse. That purse, come on, the purse. Come on. This purse helps people underestimate you, which I think, is a good thing when it comes to criminals. The mayor He's somebody you really want to impress, so I was wondering if we could do...
You know, Captain, I have a lot of nice clothes. I just don't like to overdress at work.
Absolutely, and you know what? There's no one that would ever accuse you of that. But we want the mayor's first impression of you to be as a woman capable of handling a lot of power, to look at you and think something like, wow.
Of course Brenda is too involved with all of her casework to care much about preparing for the interview, at least not to the standards that Raydor expects. This conversation, right before the final interview, reveals that the two women may never, in fact, be competitors. They just don't have the same goals in life.
I was tempted to bring a uniform escort to take you across the street.
Oh, that's not necessary.
May I ask you a question?
Sure, Captain, why not?
Do you really not want to be chief of police?
No, I don't.
And as a woman, don't you feel an obligation to at least give it a try?
As a woman, I feel I've earned the right to options, and one of my options should be to say no.
You don't think that I wanted to spend my career in internal affairs, doing a job that leaves me disliked and mistrusted by my fellow officers every day of my life? No, I chose IA because I thought it was the quickest way to achieve rank. And I also thought it'd be good for the department to see a woman in a captain's uniform, and of course you got your job the old-fashioned way.
How's that?
By sleeping with the boss. No, it's not an insult. It is a time-honored way of moving forward. But those roads are not open to everyone, and you have the chance to maybe change that a little.
So you're saying I should take the job whether I want it or not?
Yes. Please make the oh-so-terrible sacrifice of accepting a promotion that offers you more money, prestige, and power than any other job in the city. And if it will help you with the suffering, you'll not only be a positive role model for little girls all over this country, but I personally will feel very proud to have a chief that I can truly admire.
Well, thank you, Captain.
It's my pleasure, Chief.
This is as close as we get to a chat in the women's room, a la Cagney and Lacey. Otherwise, Deputy Chief Johnson and Captain Raydor's relationship just isn't like that. Back in the squad room, it's Captain Raydor's job to audit the work of the entire Major Crimes Division. The all-male detective team views her initially with the same skepticism they did Brenda. They return to a condescending, sarcastic tone, not convinced for a minute that Raydor understands their work. She earns the team's respect over time. Raydor reminds them of her role, which is to uphold department standards and investigate police actions when necessary. Over time, she uses those special powers to aid their investigative work or represent their actions to higher-ups. She also earns their respect with her willingness to step up to a challenge. In this particular interview, she's having to step in and take on gathering information from a lawyer who, in fact, is on a mission to destroy the Major Crimes Division.
Hello, Peter. Ooh, love the time. I have been thinking about you so much. It's almost a relief to be able to sit down and talk to you for a minute.
Well, I'm not answering any questions about how I'm getting my information from inside the LAPD. And interrogating me on any subject could be interpreted by a federal judge as a form of harassment. So you'd better have a damn good reason for putting me in an interview room.
Oh. I do. The murder of James Turner, a.k.a. J-Rock, and your business card, which we found on his body. So, when was the last time you spoke with or saw James Turner, a.k.a. J-Rock?
That is none of your business.
Okay, then where were you yesterday afternoon?
Also none of your business.
Might you have been at San Quentin prison, visiting Reggie Moses on death row?
If I find out the LAPD has been illegally monitoring my whereabouts...
Before you start huffing and puffing and trying to blow my house down, you signed into San Quentin prison, Peter. It's a matter of public record. Now, you spoke with Reggie Moses at 110 Crib. Afterwards, he made a phone call. And then another 110 Crib. J-Rock ended up dead.
Reggie is in prison, so he didn't shoot anyone. Now, if you want someone who's out and about with a good motive to kill J-Rock, why don't you begin right here with the LAPD?
Give me a reason, and I will.
J-Rock was a witness to the death of Terrell Baylor. He saw it happen.
Yet it's precisely the diversity that both women among a field of men bring to their jobs within that high level of law enforcement leadership that makes them effective. Raydor's thought processes are similar to Brenda's, though a bit more conservative. Raydor studies Brenda's interrogation techniques and performs capably on her own. It makes you wonder whether Brenda was a phenomenon because of her distinct skills and training, or from the sheer novelty that as a woman in a male-dominated profession with CIA training on her resume, she was just the only game in town. Raydor stands with Brenda, though, throughout the uncertainty of department leadership and succession. In the last season, Chief Pope is named interim chief of the LAPD, that is, after both of them had been passed up the first time around. And that prompts him to act much more conservatively and demand higher scrutiny of the high-profile actions of the Major Crimes Division. This would be his second chance at becoming police chief, and he wasn't going to let it slip through his hands. To achieve that, he's got to reel Brenda in a bit and uses Captain Raydor to do it.
Yes. And he's frustrated. At one time, he may have been your friend, and something more than that. But he is also your boss, and he's demanding that you recognize his authority.
I want that journal.
Did you not hear one word that I just said? I kept Chief Pope from signing that complaint by assuring him that you were capable of seeing his position. The Catholic Church has enormous influence.
How am I supposed to investigate this homicide if the entire power structure here is lining up to protect the poor, defenseless Catholic Church? And why does Chief Pope still have this enormous chip on his shoulder? I mean, I'm ready to put behind how completely horrible he's been. I don't even need an apology. I mean, can't we just, you know?
You may be able to let it go. But Chief Pope isn't ready to let it go. And if you can't keep relations friendly, you need to keep them smart.
What would smart be in this situation?
Letting Chief Pope resume his negotiations with the church so that he solves the problem.
He caused the problem. Fine. If I let Chief Pope get the journal his way, will he back off on that complaint? Because if he signs it anyway, I will explode. I really will.
I think before dropping the complaint entirely, he's going to wait to see how you proceed with your investigation.
Brenda struggles to perform and lead in an environment where she is required to follow every rule to the letter and, as well, navigate the political whims of a large bureaucracy. She has no patience for it. Raydor, however, has an eye on the big picture and counsels Brenda more than once.
As good as Coach Carr's intentions are, his actions were illegal.
Or you could say that the challenges he faced at work forced him to look for unorthodox solutions. And now for going above and beyond the call of duty, he'll probably lose his job.
Well, maybe it's time for him to move on.
I don't know. He seemed to be doing important work. Even if it wasn't fully appreciated by his boss and fellow teachers. There's something about that I find admirable. Me too.
Chief Pope's demeanor leads the viewer to think that at any moment he's going to throw Brenda under the bus. After 7 seasons, we begin to learn just how much trusting her team has become a key element in Brenda's success. She thinks of Pope as a member of her team, even though he's her superior. But in this last season, his actions and criticism of her causes her to question their shared loyalty. This is heightened as the story arc reveals that the division likely contains a person who is leaking information to adversaries. The leak is referenced throughout many episodes, and Brenda denies the possibility, then procrastinates on acting on it, and really can't bring herself to even have a plan by which she isolates and assesses each member of her team. Anything short of full loyalty and trust is unthinkable. She begins to recognize situations where leaked information would be particularly harmful and utilizes Fritz's FBI position as a workaround. Ultimately, it is Captain Raydor who uncovers the leak. And it's revealed late in the last season as things get most tense. But it leaves Brenda with a sense of relief that her unshakable trust in her team was not in error. These 3 last seasons are a slow walk through the elements of professional relationships that make a workplace memorable and successful. Her leadership is affirmed through her team's performance and their outright commitment to the positions that they hold. They are united and versed in their mission, and even Buzz, the media specialist on the team, who is not a police officer, saves Brenda's life. A suspect makes it through a number of body searches, yet is still able to get a gun inside the interview room. Buzz sees the suspect on the room's video feed, brandishing the gun, waiting for Brenda to return. Buzz tackles her as she's about ready to walk into that room. So we see that they have lived through a lot, and they've endured Captain Raydor in their squad room, and they have seen Chief Pope come a bit untied as he plays out his game to become the chief of police. And by the series' final episode, writers have wrapped up every loose end with a brilliant pink bow. There certainly was ample time to do so, as it was Sedgwick who said during the filming of Season 6 that she wanted the show to end with the contract, the conclusion of Season 7. So writers had the time to lay the foundations of a psychological thriller plotline, and yet they also still delivered some pretty good comic fun. Moreover, they brought the sometimes heartless, driven character of Brenda Leigh Johnson to the epiphany that life is short and we spend far more time with our co-workers than with our family members. So we need to keep that in mind. Also, by the closer's last episode, and that is to say, sunsetting a show that had eclipsed all other cable-oriented TV shows for the ratings game and for notoriety and the number of award nominations that it had received, it was clear that the show had developed an incredibly loyal following. On YouTube today, there are all sorts of video compilations. This is the work of fans, most of them women, where clips involving Brenda and Raydor, together or individually, are set to music. In most cases, the music is a pop song of women's strength, sung by a woman. Clearly, followers have found the empowerment in the subtle relationship of the 2 fictional characters. Some people spend hours strategizing their fantasy football team. Others compile video and put it to music as a tribute to 2 breakthrough women characters. It's safe to say that the emerging generation of feminists get it. Eye contact, fashion, and even Brenda's ready stash of candy and ding-dongs in her desk drawer, that they get the importance of these details that are developed and polished over 7 years. They've been received loud and cleared by the female and likely male fan base. In both real life and in character, Kyra Sedgwick and Brenda Leigh Johnson were heading for burnout by the last season. Sedgwick lamented the demands of the job heading into that final season. And in that time, McDonnell became even more accessible to the media for promotions and interviews about the closer. Her character and the conflict it brought to the show was the news hook, and she consistently delivered the deeper analysis of how the show fits into TV herstory and mirrors, to some degree, women's experience in the workplace. Indeed, the police detective genre, featuring strong women on the force, remains alive and well. We've just traced its DNA to Cagney Lacey and identified a new standard on which future shows can and should be built. This installment of Advanced TV Herstory uses audio from the show, of which all 7 seasons are available on DVD. The poor sound quality interview with Mary McDonnell was a quick interview at the Paley Center in LA, done as part of the show's big tribute event at the center. Great content, poor quality. Let me know what you're thinking about content and quality or ideas for future topics by posting comments at iTunes or the Libsyn hosting site, or by emailing me at advancedtvherstory@gmail.com. Find the podcast on Twitter. Our handle is TV Herstory. Thanks for listening. I'm your host, Cynthia Bemis Abrams.